The Snow Queen. In a bustling city where chimney smoke curled against the winter sky, there lived two children who were the closest of friends. Kai and Gerda weren't related by blood, but their hearts were as entwined as the roses that climbed the trellis between their windows. They spent their days playing in the little rooftop garden. Their families shared, tending to the roses and dreaming of adventures beyond the city's walls. Kai was a boy with hair as dark as a raven's wing and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Gerda, with her golden braids and freckled nose, had a smile that could melt the coldest heart. Together, they were inseparable, their laughter echoing through the narrow streets and their imaginations taking them to far-off lands. On long winter evenings, Kai's grandmother would gather the children around the crackling fire and tell them stories of trolls and fairies, of magical lands and mystical creatures. But no tale captivated them quite like the legend of the Snow Queen. In the farthest reaches of the north, grandmother would say, her eyes twinkling, where the aurora dances across the sky, there lives a queen of ice and snow. Her palace is made of frost, its towers reaching so high they pierce the clouds. They say her heart is as cold as the deepest winter, and her beauty is so terrible it can freeze a person's very soul. Kai and Gerda would listen, wide-eyed, huddling closer together as the wind howled outside. But they were safe in their cozy homes, surrounded by love and warmth. The Snow Queen was just a story, a figment of imagination to make the long winter nights more exciting, or so they thought. What the children didn't know was that high above the world, in a palace of ice and starlight, the Snow Queen was very real indeed. She sat upon her frozen throne, gazing into a mirror that showed her all the corners of the earth. Her hair was white as new-fallen snow, her skin pale as moonlight on ice, and her eyes were like shards of glass, beautiful and utterly devoid of warmth. The Snow Queen was lonely. For centuries, she had ruled over her vast, empty kingdom, with only the howling wind and the silent snow for company. She longed for a companion, someone to share the cold beauty of her realm. And as she peered into her mirror, her gaze fell upon the little rooftop garden, where Kai and Gerda played. "Ah," she breathed, her voice like icicles tinkling in the wind. "What a fine prince that boy would make. His heart is still pure, untouched by the ugliness of the world. He shall be mine." With a wave of her hand, the Snow Queen sent forth a blast of icy wind. It swirled through the sky, carrying with it tiny shards of her magic mirror, a mirror crafted by trolls long ago, with the power to distort everything it reflected, making the good and beautiful seem worthless, while the bad and ugly appeared magnificent. As Kai and Gerda played in their garden, a shard of this evil mirror found its way into Kai's eye. In an instant, the world around him changed. The roses he had loved now seemed wilted and ugly. Gerda's smile, once so warm and comforting, now appeared silly and annoying. Even his dear grandmother's stories lost their magic, becoming nothing more than foolish tales. Gerda noticed the change in her friend immediately. "Kai, what's wrong?" she asked, reaching out to him. But Kai pulled away, a cold smirk on his face. "Nothing's wrong," he said, his voice sharp as ice. "I've just realized how dull and stupid everything is. These flowers are ugly, your games are childish, and I'm tired of it all." Tears welled up in Gerda's eyes, but Kai didn't seem to care. He turned away from her, his gaze drawn to the swirling snowflakes that had begun to fall. Among them, he thought he saw a figure tall and beautiful, with eyes that glittered like stars. The Snow Queen had come. She appeared before Kai in all her terrible beauty, her sleigh pulled by horses made of snow and ice. "Come with me, dear Kai," she said, her voice as enticing as the promise of endless winter holidays. I will show you wonders beyond your wildest dreams." Without a backwards glance at Gerda or the life he was leaving behind, Kai climbed into the Snow Queen's sleigh. In a flurry of snowflakes, they were gone, leaving behind only a devastated Gerda and a garden where the roses withered in the sudden frost. Days turned to weeks, and weeks to months. The people of the city searched for Kai, but as winter deepened, hope began to fade. Only Gerda refused to give up. She knew in her heart that Kai was alive, and she was determined to find him, no matter the cost. As spring began to melt the snow, Gerda set out on her quest. She took nothing but the red shoes Kai had always admired and a heart full of love and determination. Her journey would take her through enchanted gardens and dark forests, across swift rivers and over high mountains. She would face witches and robbers, talking flowers and helpful animals. But through it all, Gerda never lost sight of her goal, to find Kai and bring him home. Meanwhile, in the Snow Queen's palace, Kai was trapped in a world of endless winter. The shard of mirror in his eye made him see only the cold beauty of his icy prison. He spent his days trying to solve a puzzle. The Snow Queen had set him if he could spell the word eternity with pieces of ice. She promised to set him free and make him master of the world. But Kai's heart was as frozen as the lake outside the palace. He couldn't remember his home, his family, or even Gerda. The warmth of love and friendship was as foreign to him now as the idea of spring in this land of eternal winter. As Gerda journeyed north, she encountered many who tried to deter her from her path. A kindly old woman with a beautiful garden tried to enchant her into staying, making the roses disappear so Gerda wouldn't be reminded of Kai. But Gerda's love was stronger than any spell, and she eventually broke free. Continuing her quest, she met a prince and princess, who gave her warm clothes and a golden coach for her journey. She was captured by robbers, only to be befriended by a little robber girl, who set her free and gave her a reindeer to ride. Each encounter tested Gerda's resolve, but also showed her the kindness that existed in the world, kindness that gave her strength to carry on. Finally, after many hardships, Gerda reached the land of eternal snow. The reindeer couldn't take her any further, for even its hardy hooves couldn't traverse the razor-sharp eyes that surrounded the Snow Queen's palace. But Gerda wouldn't be deterred. She set out on foot, her bare feet bleeding on the ice, but her heart burning with determination. As she approached the palace, a fierce snowstorm whipped around her, as if the very elements were trying to force her back. But Gerda pressed on, whispering a prayer she had learned as a child. Miraculously, the wind died down, and the snowflakes transformed into an army of angels, their wings forming a protective barrier around her. Inside the palace, the Snow Queen sat on her throne, watching Kai as he fruitlessly attempted to spell eternity with the pieces of ice. She felt a disturbance in her realm, a warmth that didn't belong in her world of ice and snow. Rising from her throne, she went to investigate, leaving Kai alone with his impossible task. It was then that Gerda finally found her way into the Great Hall of Ice. Her heart leapt when she saw Kai, but fell just as quickly when she realized he didn't recognize her. His skin was pale blue, with cold, his eyes vacant as he moved the ice pieces around. "Kai!" Gerda cried, running to him. But Kai didn't respond, didn't even look up from his frozen puzzle. Tears sprang to Gerda's eyes, tears of joy at finding her friend, and tears of sorrow at seeing what had become of him. As she embraced Kai, her warm tears fell on his chest, melting the ice that had formed around his heart. The warmth of Gerda's love began to thaw Kai from the inside out. Slowly, recognition dawned in his eyes. "Gerda," he whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. Is it really you? As Kai's frozen heart melted, so too did the shard of evil mirror in his eye. He blinked, and suddenly the world was right again. He saw Gerda not as the annoyance the mirror had made her seem, but as the dear friend she had always been. Kai began to cry, and his tears washed away the last of the mirror's evil magic. Just then, the Snow Queen returned. She was enraged to see her spell broken, her captive prince embracing this girl, who radiated warmth and love. With a howl of fury, she summoned all her powers to strike them down. But love, as it turns out, is the most powerful magic of all. As the Snow Queen's icy blast hurtled towards them, Gerda stood firm, shielding Kai with her body. The force of her love created a barrier that the Snow Queen's magic couldn't penetrate. The icy magic rebounded, striking the Snow Queen herself. In that moment, the Snow Queen's own frozen heart began to melt. As the ice cracked and fell away, she remembered a time long ago when she, too, had known love and warmth. Tears, the first she had shed in centuries, fell from her eyes, and with each tear, her realm of eternal winter began to thaw. Kai and Gerda watched in amazement. As spring bloomed in the land of always winter, flowers burst through the melting snow, and birds began to sing. The Snow Queen's icy palace transformed into a shimmering castle of crystal, reflecting the newborn sunlight in rainbows of color. The Snow Queen herself was transformed. Gone was the cruel beauty of winter. In its place was a queen, with eyes full of warmth and a smile as gentle as a spring breeze.